Welcome to A Scrap Life, a podcast solely focused on the hustlers, grinders, operators, and business owners who live and breathe the scrap metal industry every day. We are the original recyclers. No suits required, just guts and hard work. Here is your host, Brett Eckhart.
In this episode, I connected with my buddy Brad Rudover of Detroit Scrap via my first ever Zoom podcast. The two of us have been talking about getting together to drink a couple of PBRs in a can and do a podcast, but COVID's messed that up, so we had to go to Zoom, as he's in Canada and I'm in the U.S. Had a lot of fun shooting the shit with Brad about his history in the scrap industry and his newest venture, Scrap University. Check it out.
First Zoom episode of A Scrap Live. I get the opportunity. We're going to go international on this one. I wear my America flag hat just for you, bud. Mr. Brad Rudover, Detroit Scrap. Good morning, man. Good to have you on.
Oh man, it's wonderful. Thank you for letting a foreign country onto your show up here in Canadian Indiana.
I love it.
Can't get across the damn border because of this silliness that's happening.
I know. Well, we've been talking about doing a podcast for a while now, and we're kind of trying to be patient and do our thing and kind of see if we could wait this thing out and get together in person, drink a couple of PBRs in a can. But we're going to have to settle for coffee and a Zoom call and just try and do what we do.
A sign of the times, if you will. Obviously, hey, when we connect in person, it's a lot of fun. I think we're both on that same level where we just enjoy our life, and you specifically blast it out every single day. It's wonderful seeing your messages of positivity. I'm the same, it's like, so yeah, obviously this in the future, when we do this together in the same room, crushing back PBR in a can,
it's gonna be good.
Can people.
Yeah, aluminum cans, no bottles.
And so this is cool. Hey, sign of the times. Okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Okay, we got to deal with the technology that we have. It's wonderful, the technology that we have.
Yeah. And the best part about all this new technology, at some point, somebody has to recycle it, and that's where we come in.
It's key. So, yeah, I mean, more people are sitting at home using computers, buying technology. I mean, all of that has metal, like even the laptop that I'm on right now, my MacBook Air is made of aluminum.
Yes, sir.
So
Brad, just for everybody's sake, and probably as much for my own sake, can you just give me a little bit of history on yourself? How I always say, part of the Scrap Life podcast is just finding people that are true blue scrap guys, gals that like live and breathe the industry and truly have a passion for it. So I know you kind of have deep roots in the scrap industry, and that's one thing you and I have always connected on. But can you give everybody that's listening a little bit of background on you and and your scrap industry roots?
It's like street cred,
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, 100%.
Thug life, scrap life, it's all intertwined. Yeah, and that's right. It was like, so you and I have a very similar story, and it's like to find someone that was born on a bale of bright and shiny, it's rare, and so that I was, tell you the truth, never ever want to be in this industry, man. Never ever. The way things ran in Detroit, I'll tell you, man, it was pretty gross, like dog eat dog, backstabbing. It was like, just, I told my dad, I'm like, I want nothing to do with this business, because I'll tell you, Brett, I've been in so many dirty, dingy warehouses in Detroit. Yeah. My dad's included. He'd have to go in packing, legit every morning. Like my grandfather used to go in to our warehouse. He'd carry 2 different wallets. Okay. One in his back pocket, one up here. Okay. In the event he got mugged, he gives the one in his back pocket that has no cash in it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the neighborhood I'm from. That's the scrap business that I knew. And so I was like, nah, this isn't for me. So the fact that, we're doing this today, it's wonderful. Like that I was able to kind of move to the West Coast and get reintroduced to a different vibe. Okay.
Yeah.
And hey, I have a lot of friends back in Detroit that are in the scrap business, and they're doing their thing, and the business has changed. Okay.
So you grew up in Detroit, downtown Detroit area, right in the heart of it.
My dad's warehouse, instead of like a nice address on it, or like you'd have like your brass maybe lettering, is spray paint, just tagged with spray paint, 411 Fort Street. I don't know. That just speaks to like where I'm from, and like it was just, there's so many stories that I can tell about, guys filling up, water beds and putting them in the back of their pickup truck and weighing on a scale and then popping them on their way in the yard.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm saying is like, so I wasn't even supposed to be here, if you think about it, and the fact that I was able to kind of go, no, I can see this industry is really wonderful. And I was able to get involved with, a good organization when I moved to the West Coast. Like the Davis family really let me kind of have full reign of the facility. And I just said, okay, I'm going to take an academic approach to this now. I'm not going to think like I'm in Detroit.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's study, let's learn, let's just try and become the best at everything, right?
Basically become like a student of the game, right? Like it's you have to, as things change and as the industry changes, you have to become a true student of the game to stay relevant. You can't, the old school way, while it still exists to a certain extent for some people, if you stay old school and you never change, you never grow as a person, as a business, whatever it is. You got to continue to develop.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that old school thinking. Is like, I just had a call, like a consulting call last week with a 100-year-old company in New York. And they're just saying like, we need to break out of our old ways of doing business. And so I'm working with them to kind of bring them up to speed. And so that was kind of the approach that I took, Brett, is like, I came out of, college where I was studying, and then I, kind of just brought that same attitude into the scrap business. I said, well, I just want to learn everything, and I guess I just assumed that that's how everybody does it, like, because it was like really my first per se job. And it turns out that wasn't the case. Most people were just punching the clock and, hey, and so that was kind of interesting for me, that I wanted to learn every commodity. I wanted to learn every piece of machinery. I wanted to learn every process. Why? So that I could then share that with others, And so that was like just my whole career. And it really gave me great opportunities to get involved with ISRI, and then the Canadian version is Carey, where I became the president of the BC chapter, and like, so talk about like a cool thing to do. Like, I mean, hey, a lot of people have their way of saying like volunteering takes up your time and you're not getting paid for it. I'll tell you, volunteering has made my career, has made my entire life. It's profound.
It just goes to show you, like, to me, there's two things. When they say like rust, when it gets in your veins, like scrap gets in your veins early in life, no matter how much you wanted to shun the industry or whatever, just because you didn't like the way it was being operated where you were from, it still found a way. It found a way back in your bloodstream, and you couldn't get out of it. You were stuck. But that's because you found another mousetrap. You found another way of doing business in the same industry that was more appealing to you. Because I think that there's lot of people that like the old school way of scrap. They like, just the grit, grind, like the old school way of doing shit. And I say, like, if that's your way of doing it, and that's you feel like that's your way of operating your business, and that's good for you, by all means, like, keep doing it. But you're going to lose out on some of the younger generation, people that they like the industry, they want to be in it, but there's more to it than just handling everything manual and doing everything as basic as you would in 1960. There's a better way to do stuff.
It's funny that you mention it like that. Is like, so like you're right. The iron running through your blood. It's like, I have childhood memories of my dad's dirty, dingy warehouse, like legit. And it's just etched in there. And as much as I went into the IT business, like, so I had like a .com company out of college. And as that project was kind of coming to a completion, I just said, Dad, like, I want to do something different. Being in front of a computer. I mean, it's funny that we're in front of a computer today, but I was just working in front of a computer, as a tech company. And I just said, Dad, I want to, do something, outside or whatever. And he said, well, get in the scrap business. And I was like, shit. And so
he reeled you back in.
Well, I think his whole plan was that I would go back to Detroit, like once I kind of get my feet wet in the industry. And so what's really cool and what really helped me transition from the tech world into the scrap business and bring my tech knowledge with me, it was the tangible nature. Okay, so you send pictures all the time of, this is a load of, truck wheels going down the road or car wheels going over to Bill, and it's tangible and you recognize that, right? Mm-hmm. And you see it. And so like at the end of your day, you watched material get processed, you watched loads go down the road and turn it into cash, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're in front of a computer all day, programming or providing web content or whatever the heck you're doing, it's not necessarily as tangible as physical items that we handle. So your point is right there, Brett.
And as a guy on the production side, like, and I think, you recognize this, growing up in the business, people see a load of copper chops or a load of aluminum wheels go down the road, and all they can think about, what's that load worth? Oh, that load's worth $20,000, or that load's worth $150,000, or whatever it is. But the guys that really are in it every day, that are truly operating their businesses, they know all the pieces of the puzzle that it took to make that load worth $150,000. They know how many customers had to get handled, all the equipment that had to get bought to run it through the chop line, to get it into a box, to get it on a truck, to get it delivered to the mill. And so I look at it as like in a weird like way, I look at it as a work of art. I look at it as like, I know all the background that went into that load and what had to happen to get that load to the consumer. And it's not just $150,000.
And like, right. And so that's the idea, is like, once you can think like abstract, like you do, you're like, okay, I remember that customer with the pickup truck that dumped 200 pounds of birch cliff. But I also remember buying a few bales from the guy up the street, you can visualize that whole load, right? And so I want to take your point a step further and go, look at the impact that you had on all of the people involved in that process. And so you often talk about your employees, like your team. You're like, I'm nothing, it's my team. And so you got to think of that as like those truckloads that you're sending down the road. How many families did you help by sending that scrap down the road, by recycling? It's like, that's how I look at it. I was like, so again, it's that mental shift from like simply looking at financial gain, you know, me, instead giving. And how many families did I help today? Like, how many people work for you, Brad?
Yeah, all in by a couple hundred.
So think of all of those families that you're helping.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing is why when I talk about pressure, or when I talk about, you know, like the way I look at things is, you know, when the whole COVID and all this stuff hits, like I take that pressure on my shoulders and I say, okay, like our goal is to get through all this, not lay anybody off, keep everybody full-time employed, and keep going, right? Luckily, we are pretty diversified in our business entities to a certain extent, but also luckily, you know, all of our business entities were able to still operate, partly because of the state we live in and partly because of the industries we operate and just the combination. So luckily we were able to weather the storm, you know.
Don't you think that comes from your philosophy, right? Is like,
I think for sure. Yeah.
Right. It's like you're the one that's the first to say, hey, this is the time to invest in our business. This is the time to get people going. This is the time to help people, right? During a stressful period, you know, where, you know, it's definitely a psychological battle that we're going through here. And you and I had to talk back in the summer, right? We had that talk in the summer about your posts that you put out. And what did I say to you? You know, I just said, keep it going. Keep it going. Like, you don't
stay positive.
Yeah. Well, but I said, like, you don't fully know the impact of what you're writing on the internet. Like, and so I just think it's awesome, dude. You know, like,
well, I mean, and you know what I want to go back to, and you know, some people, I think at the beginning, like we're kind of questioning, like a lot of this, half of the shit I would post on LinkedIn or on different social media websites. And I mean, I post who I sell the material to, like what's going on. And some of it, I'm sure raised some eyebrows internally, like our insurance guy, like, hey, you probably should be posting a picture of a wrecked truck. I'm like, fuck it. It is what it is. Like, this is life. This is the business that we're in. And if we only post all the good shit, to me, it's like a fake facade, right?
But dude, like that's what it's become. Like, why do you have a filter on your Instagram phone or whatever to make you beautified? You know, like that's just our world now. Is like everyone wants to just talk. It's like the gambler that only talks about his wins. You know, it's like, oh, I won 10 G's the other day. Well, what did you lose the day before?
I know.
And so, like, hey, when people criticize or look at what you're doing, you know, critically, it tells you that you're doing something right.
But where I was going with that was how I met you, right? Like part of the reason that you and I connected was I was posting some stuff on LinkedIn or whatever, and then you and I connected. We have some mutual friends, like old Mr. Inman down in Cass, and some guys.
Shout out to Billy Boy.
Yeah, who I did have here a couple months ago. But so we have some mutual friends in the industry, and then that kind of helped us connect. But a lot of it was just, I think, by you putting yourself out there and being honest about your business and what you have going on. I think you attract similar people or similar minded people, which was my goal, right? I'm like, I want people that love doing it as much as I love doing it, that have similar interests, similar goals as I do. And that will get business eventually, you know? And I think that it's been super beneficial for me because I met a ton of great people throughout the journey. And I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. Like I'm not even, I'm not even deep yet. I'm just scratching the surface and making some awesome friends for life, the way I see it. I mean, I know for a fact that, you and I, whether we do business or not, we have a ton in common, and we'll always have, you know, something to talk about.
Well, it's funny is like, I feel that like it's transitioned, right? So it's gone from like, hey dude, like, you know, I'll buy some of your scrap and get you into different markets, to, I don't even think like we talk about buying or selling. You're just like, here, book a load, whatever. But
Yeah.
we're more like just talking about how we see life, how we can help other people, how we see this business kind of changing, growing. Like our conversation about your copper reclaim the other day.
Yeah.
I think that's just such an innovative idea. You know, like it makes complete sense. And, you know, you're kind of like, well, I don't know, like if it's gonna, I'm like, no, dude, it's a freaking awesome idea, you know?
Yeah.
And so in order to, you know, progress in your business, you have to progress as a person too. And so what you're saying is like, hey, look at all of the wonderful people I've met, right?
100%. Yeah.
By just being yourself. Like you're not trying to pretend to be like this CEO and you're wearing a suit every day. It's like, no, forget it. Like I'm just Brett, and I'm just the dude, you know? It's like, I don't even need a title, man. Like, it's just like, we know our stuff. We want to make this industry better, and we want to work with our friends.
Yeah. Which kind of leads me into, I mean, and one of the reasons why I want to get you on, just because we haven't been able to connect in person, but the other reason was that whiteboard behind you. And I just, because of your interest and because of your, I mean, interest and, I say, love for the industry. I mean, you've taken all the places you've worked, and we haven't even got into all the history of where you've worked and what you've done. And we can do, I don't want to leave that out, because I think that's a huge part of why, you know, that
it's built me to where I am today. Like, I mean,
100%.
Just like you know, like your history brings you to this point, right? And so
it's your street cred. You said it before, like earlier, that's your street cred. What gives you validity when you talk about different grades and what's going on with the product. The reason you know that is because of the experience you've had in the past. So I do want to go into Scrap University. Like, that's a big hit list item for me, but I want to really get back to like how did that evolve? But where did you go after you left? You built the .com deal. Where'd you go next? And to go work on this in the scrap industry after your .com job?
Yeah, and so like I said, my freaking dad, man, he pushed me into the scrap business.
Yeah,
but it turned out to be wonderful. As you know, I met up with Davis Trading and the Davis family, and like I kind of had that street cred because, you know, he has Jewish dude from the scrap biz. You know, it's like, all right. Yeah. Cool. Go run our yard, you know, like it was like, it really, they gave me full autonomy, which is kind of rare, you know. It was like, I mean, hey, I also worked there for free. I said, hey, I'll work for free. I just want to show you what I'm made of. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, that's just me, dude. You know, like, so, you know, first, I don't even think I made it a month. They're just like, all right, we got to pay you, you know, like, so. And so that's kind of, like I said, I took the academic approach to it, and like they had been doing things like pencil and paper.
Where was that yard based out of?
It was like right in Vancouver. Okay. Downtown Vancouver. You know, I had moved out to the West Coast to kind of be like a snowboard bum, and, you know, yeah. You know, I figured, I worked so hard in college, I need a break. It's like, shut up, you know.
Hindsight 2020, you're like, oh, okay, maybe that wasn't that hard.
yeah. It was really tough, like going to keg parties every weekend, and it's like, and so no, it was very fortunate, and so I ended up being with them for like 10, 12 years. It was a long period of time, during which you know, they asked me, hey, do you want to get involved with carry which is, again, Canadian Association Recycling Industries, here in Canada. So it's kind of the equivalent of ISRI, right? And so I said, yeah, sure. Like I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah.
And it's funny how it turns out. It was like I ended up becoming the chapter president, and typically your term is supposed to be like 2 years. Like I ended up doing it for like 8, and like, so I'm just like, so it was either like a function of like I was a sucker or I was doing a good job, like, so I'm not sure. But I feel that it was a wonderful experience. I really learned a lot about people, like, so I got to meet with all of the different yard owners and employees, and just very beneficial for my career. And then at the same time, I got involved with ISRI. So I was on like the Pacific Northwest board. And so that was, again, just a great experience, lucky, and volunteering, So,
well, you say lucky, but I just say by working hard, you create your own luck. And I believe that there's a certain amount of luck in life. There's sometimes the chips fall in your favor, but just because they fall in your favor doesn't mean you're smart enough to take advantage of them or understand that they are falling in your favor. But I think the harder you work, the more sometimes those chips fall and give you opportunities to take advantage. So there's a hint of luck, some happenstance of people being in the right room at the same time, or some connections that enable you to, have a conversation with somebody you may not have had a conversation with previously. But luck is a very finite piece of success in my book.
Well, and I guess, like, here's how I look at it is like, so back in undergrad, our business law professor stood up in front of our class and said, if there's one thing I can recommend that all of you do is learn how to play golf. Okay. He said, you're going to sign more contracts, in the pub at a golf course than you will in a boardroom. Right. And so, like, for like a 20-year-old kid to hear that, you're kind of like, this guy is kind of out there, but through the volunteering, like with Carrie and ISRI, golf made my career, and like, so that's why I say is like, I know what you're saying about luck and hard work, and I just, it seems kind of trivial that golf would be the thing that makes your career, blossom, like, so it was very interesting. And so,
you want to know real quick, let me tell you just a side story off that.
Sure.
So when I graduated college, my dad's like, I want to get you a graduation present. I'm like, okay, like, that's fine. And, I don't know what people get when they graduate college other than a fucking job, which is what I got. But my dad bought me a set of golf clubs, and he goes, you're going to need these. I had never golfed that much. I golfed a little bit in high school. It never was a big thing and never was a big piece of my, but he got them for a different reason. He got them because, A, you're going to need them for work, for business. And he goes, and this is the one way that I can escape work for 4 hours, be outside, and just take a deep breath. I think that was his reason for buying them for me. It was more like, you might need a break at some point. So go take a break and go hit golf balls or whatever, or the business. And I've realized it now as I've gotten a little bit older, the flip side of golf, which is the business aspect of it. And I'm not a great golfer, but I'll go and golf with vendors, customers, clients, guys on our team. And just, that's what we do. So I'm just reiterating what your business professor told you was 100% correct where I come from as well.
Well, and so there you go. It's like, so your dad saw the value in it. And so, like, so you mentioned like a 4-hour increment is like, so how often do you guys spend 4 hours with anybody?
Yeah.
Like, you have a captive audience. And so you're really getting to know someone on so many different levels. Like, if they slice the ball in the woods, are they going to throw their club? And you're going to go, oh, okay, this guy is a hothead,
Yeah.
you know, like, so it's kind of like you really get to see someone's character. And so like, it's amazing. Like, so what the game of golf has done. And so, yeah, like I used to organize tournaments and, you know, I'd get all of the scrap yards, and I would get vendors, you know, like Lee Bear and all these different companies that service our industry. And I would always like think of it as like, oh, what is the best way for people to network? You know, so I would have like a yard with 3 other vendors, right? So that like then there's business being conducted, because like that's like the important part of like getting together when we could get together.
Yep, exactly. Back in the olden days when you could actually play around a golf with a group of people.
when you could shake hands or take your ball out of the hole with your hand, like back in the good old days. And so Brett, like, I mean, really, like, you know, the jump in with the Davis family into the associations, then of course you meet all of these cool people. You know, my buddy Greg Schnitzer, he kept pushing me. He's like, dude, come work for us. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to be in the big corp, you know, like, and so, and like, it just kept coming. Like everyone kept saying like, dude, you're a smart guy, you know your stuff. And I was like, I don't really know anything, you know? And like, it's just, you kind of, you know, you just kind of like look at yourself as like, hey, I'm just doing a job. Like, I don't know, like, isn't everyone on the same level? And so eventually like Sims, you know, lured me in, and I went over there, and I was actually very intimidated, you know, like
Sims where at?
So there's a Sims outlet in Vancouver, like a shredder yard. And so as far as I was concerned, I was kind of like in the minor leagues, and I was going to the majors because it's a shredder. Like shredder is kind of like the apex of our business, right?
Correct.
I don't know, what, 40, 50 million bucks for a shredder and a downstream. Like that's substantial. Like they're not on every corner, you know, like maybe on the East Coast, but but the overall point is like, you know, here I didn't really think I was anything special. Like I was just like, well, just like you, dude. Like, I don't know, I grew up in the scrapyard. It's my family business, like work for some people, like it's the scrap business. I'm like, who cares, you know? Like that's kind of what my mentality was. I was like, well, it's like garbage, you know? But then I started to realize like, well, no, like I add value to this organization. And so, yeah, they pulled me in there like, hey, we need you to like straighten out our non-ferrous department. Cause like with Schnitzer and Sims, I mean, hey, come on, they're shredder companies. They're focused on steel, right? The ferrous.
Yeah.
And so non-ferrous is always kind of like this weird, like stepchild sort of thing. And so, and like, I guess you just don't realize that you're kind of like a special kind of unicorn if you know non-ferrous. Like again, a series of incorrect assumptions, you know, like I just assume that everyone knows all the shit that I know. Right.
Yeah, 100%.
And so, dude, I get to Sims and I'm like super intimidated. I'm like, oh man, I don't know anything. Right.
Yeah.
And I get there and I'm like, so, you know, like, is there like training or like, no, man, you know your shit. Go. I'm like,
go get it done.
So it was interesting. Then like you kind of start to go through the big org, and I was on like the, you know, continuous improvement national call, and I'm like kind of hearing from all these different people. Again, just from my point of view, I kept thinking that everyone's like way smarter than me, and like just because
sometimes in life people don't give themselves enough credit, right? Like, and I think that's probably like the where you fell into is you just didn't give yourself enough credit for how much you actually knew about the industry, which is hard when you're kind of a self-deprecating personality. You know, I have that trait is it's never all about me, and it's never all about what I know.
Right.
And so you sometimes maybe don't give yourself enough credit about what you do actually know.
Well, I think it's a mix, Brett, is like, so what you're saying, but then also the respect factor for other people that have made it into this great big organization. You're like, well, you must be in the major leagues for a reason. You must be awesome, you know?
Yeah.
And then like, you know, then you start realizing like, oh, okay, these people are not students of the game. They're just doing a job.
Yeah. And
so
the bigger company you go to, and I've said this to other people, whether it's the scrap industry or not, the bigger the organization that you go to, people aren't as much of a Swiss Army knife as they are in a smaller organization, right? Because it's so big and there's so many layers and there's so many levels and there's so many offshoots that you're given a job as like you know, whatever. I mean, give me a big job and you're an accountant. So you're just an accountant for
stay in your box, stay in your lane.
Receivables, right? Like you don't touch anything else. You don't understand how everything else works. But when you're a true operator, when you're a true like small business guy, you have to be a Swiss Army knife because you can't pay 20 people to do 20 different jobs. You can pay 4 people to do 20 different jobs.
Yes.
And so you do get the opportunity to become a true student of the game and understand all the processes that go along with it in that business as a whole. Now, you may not know it as in depth as each person knows their job at that point, but you still understand how the whole circle of life works in the scrap business. Right?
It's called more breadth than depth. Okay. And so like,
Correct.
Do I know about accounting from like, you know, hey, both you and I went to MBA school. We know a lot about accounting. Like, are we professional accountants? No. Okay. But like, the thing is like, you know, coming from the Davis family business, okay, to a big company, like the biggest in the world, it's such a huge difference, right? And like what you were saying is like, you're kind of like, hey, this is your little box and you stay in it. And so, you know, hey, from an entrepreneurial family to working for an entrepreneurial family, I had that mentality. And so I go to the big show and I want to do everything. I want my hand in marketing. I want, you know, everything, dude. I'm trying to improve like how the scale works. Curious about the shredder, like, you know, and they're like, dude, you're the non-ferrous dude, like stay in your lane. And I'm like,
do people feel like you were stepping on their toes?
Yeah, for sure. And like, but again, like they knew that of me coming in. They're like, okay, this dude is from this business, you know, like, and they were kind of trying to just steer me in one little direction. I'm like, well, but I can help the organization in so many ways. Like I was trying to design like their roll-off bins, you know, and they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like,
go buy some fucking non-ferrous.
Well, like, and that's just my mentality is like, I just want to try and make everything better. Like, I mean, my dad told me about this design for roll-off bins and I'm trying to explain it to them. I'm like, you put 3 strips of angle iron on the floor. Okay. So it's like that. So when you drop something on the floor of your roll-off bin, you're not punching a hole through it. It lands on that angle iron. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. And like nothing happened. I'm like, like, come on, you know, dude.
Yeah.
And like,
so how long did you work there? How long did you work at Sims?
I was there for 3 years. I learned the corporate thing, you know.
Yeah.
I learned the corporate thing. And
either you got it or you don't. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, there's those that can do the corporate thing, and I got a lot of friends that do it, are successful at it, and they find a way. And I got a lot of friends that say, that's not for me. That's not my jam. I got respect for both sides. I know for me, it wouldn't fit for the way I like to do things, but there's a lot of people out there that just fits their wheelhouse.
Here's like an analogy for like the corporate game. It's like riding a mechanical bull. Okay. Like, you know, you're going to fall off at some point and you're just holding on and going like, all right, where's this thing going? Right. Uh-huh. And like, that's just the churn that they have is like, so it's like, you see people go from Schnitz to Sims to DJ all over the place. Right. It's like, so it's like, that turnover effect. And like, hey, with you, you're like, no, like these are like my family. Like I want them to stay with me forever. You know, like once you hook on to like a really talented person, you can't let them go. You just can't. You like, you know, the value. You're like, hey, if it's money, I'll give you money. If it's vacation, I'll give you vacation. Whatever you want, you're awesome for our thing. Whereas I think like the corp just kind of is like constant churn, you know, like that's just how it is. And so like, hey, did I learn a heck of a lot of stuff? For sure.
Yeah.
Lots of learning. Like, so I would almost say like, hey, it would be great for you to go work at a big corp for like a year. And then you come back to your business will be better.
Yeah. So a little bit about me, like when I took 2 spring breaks when I was in college. People would go and do like these big fancy spring breaks in fucking Mexico or wherever. I went to work at Schnitzer.
Oh, all right.
My spring breaks, right? Like met Bob Phillips and or Leonard Schnitzer, the old school like Schnitzer before it became public.
Sure.
And I spent a week just in the office, in the yard, like just doing whatever I could to understand the corporate side of the business. So not quite a full year, but I did take 2 weeks out of it and out of my spring break 2 years in a row and just go do the dance and just see how it went. And just so I could at least get a grasp of it.
Well, right. And like, so I think like one of the biggest things is like meetings, you know, is like, so as like a small business, like you're kind of like, well, let's just be productive. Let's just go all day. Right. And like, I see your post, you're like, we're rolling on a Sunday night, getting ready for Monday. And it's like, cool, dude. And so like with like the meetings, it kind of just keeps everybody on the same page, I find. And like, once we started having meetings about meetings, I said, all right. Like that's like, I asked, I'm like, wait a minute, is this meeting about a previous meeting? I'm like, no, dude, that's not going to work for me. Right. But
yeah,
you know, if you can keep your meetings concise and your group is together and you're on the same page, you kind of get laser focused. Right. And so that was like the big jump that I noticed from small business to the big corp. And so I took that into my own business now. And so we have like Tuesday morning, we have a Google Meet video call with all of our people. And it's awesome. You know, like we talk about like what metals were successful at moving, where the market's at. You know, it's a good way for us to connect. It's really concise. It's like, it doesn't go over an hour. Right. And like, that's like the key. And so it just really gets everybody charged up on the same page. So that's really, you know, there's formality from the big corp that I learned that I like. But of course, then you got to have your personality. Like our corporate culture is wearing rock and roll t-shirts every day, you know, like we specialize in heavy metal music here because we're in the heavy metal business.
So here it is now. Like, so you've done that, you've done the Sims, you've done the big corp thing. Tell me what motivated you to start Detroit Scrap?
Again, it's like that weird thing where you finally break out of your shell. You know, you're kind of like, I don't know anything. And then like one day you're just like, shit, I know a whole bunch of stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of go, I think I can do this. And so, you know, fortunate for me, I have such an awesome friend in Faisal, who's my partner. He's been broker for 16 years. Okay. And he is just awesome at what he does. Like, I think this month, I think he's shipped over 230 containers this month.
Nice.
He's doing it on his own. Like, he's a one-man show. So it's impressive to be around. Like, you're a competitive guy. I know that about you. I would venture to say like Faisal is like one of the most competitive people I've ever met. Right. And so, but at the same time, he's super disciplined. So you're disciplined, dude. You get up at 5 a.m, you're hitting the gym, right? Mm-hmm. So you guys would, again, hey, you and I connected, you and Faisal would connect as well, right? It's like, so it's just like, as an entrepreneur, I always liken it to like a fire breathing dragon. Like in the morning, you're just like, you're ready, you know, like you just know there's going to be so much opportunity for you to jump on, and it's just cool. So like having a partner like that could motivate me to be like, hey dude, I don't know half of the shit that you know. That's what he would say to me, even to today. He's like, Brad, what's this? What's this? And I'm like, but dude, like you've been doing this for 16 years. He's like, well, I don't know the shit that you do. And so, you know, like, so it takes having a person like that in your life, an influence in your life that says, dude, you're awesome at what you do. Right. And so that's,
you leverage each other's strengths. Like your strength is your product knowledge and the connections you've made in the areas and in the businesses that you've dealt with and done business with, and the connections you've made through Carrie and Isri and everything else. So you have that. He brings to the table his ability to move material into certain markets, the fire breathing entrepreneur that's like, we can do more if I get someone that can identify the material and understand that side of the business. And that's where when you get somebody like that and you make those connections, I mean, it's awesome. And that it sounds like that's how Detroit Scrap was, you know, put together.
And that's right. Is like, so again, it comes from that like respect side of things, is like I respect him and he respects me. And like, it's like this weird thing where like we can now like finish each other's sentences, and like, it's cool. And like, it's just so fortunate, right? It's like, so it's kind of like you have a Nick on your team, you know, you're just like, you know what he's capable of, you know that he's going to be just rocking. Right. And so it's like one of those things. And so, you know, then you just build a team. Like, so, the coolest thing that you can do as an entrepreneur is not about making money. The coolest thing is about how you can help other people and their families, you know. It's like honestly,
that eventually will make you money. It's the long, if you ever listen to like Gary Vee talk about it, I mean, you give value, you give value, you give value. Eventually that circle works its way back around. The money comes. If you're not concentrating and working on the money every day, you're just working on value, knowledge, building a good team, and understanding your industry, the money part will take care of itself. As long as you have a good accountant on the back end managing it for you. That's another key to this puzzle.
With some barbecue sauce.
Exactly. Yeah, get that taken care of. But then just give value, teach, help, learn, get the right team, all the right people on the bus, and then go.
And that's what it is, Brad, is like, so like, whenever you're starting like a new venture, you're kind of like, okay, you know, I'm providing a good service, you know, we're making some bucks here. And then you're like, all right, well, you know, should I be like the chief cook and the head bottle washer? Like, and just, you know, like when you're starting out, you're working from 5 a.m. till midnight. And it's just like, you go, okay, well, I think we're at the point now where, you know, we should get some help. Right. And so for me, hiring my friend Craig, like, it was the coolest thing. It was like my partner Faisal, he was like, dude, are you sure you want to pay that much? And I was like, dude, trust me. It's like, he's going to do so much for us. And he's like, okay, I trust you. And like, the thing is like, not only does Craig bring so much to the table for our business, but how that's impacted his family. Right. Mm-hmm. Is like, so that's how I see it. And like, that's how you see it, is like, how many families can we help? And so like, instead of me like just hoarding, oh man, look at this money that we're making, it's great. I'm like, no, I want to now give it. I want to share it. And it frees me up to do other stuff to drive the business. And you're right, is like, you give it and then more comes in. And like, that's like a universal law, you know, like it's the
100%.
law of sorry?
Yeah, no, 100%. Buy equipment, get more people, build it out, keep going, and then help get people into a position where they have a career, not a job. They have something that they know isn't going anywhere, and they can depend on you to do your part. And that's the biggest thing as a small business owner from my standpoint, is letting people know, like, this isn't a fucking job. Like, we're building careers. Like, we're building something that when you're 60 something years old, you can look back and say, I remember when we had 2 yards, we had 30 people, we had 3 trucks, and now look what we've all built together. So there's a certain amount of money that's involved in that. There's a certain amount of pride that's involved in that. When you look back, and it's like building a house. Like, you start with the foundation, then you build the walls, and then you insulate, and you put all the shit that goes into building a house before you put the roof on it and put the carpet in it and paint it. And then you look back and you're like, we built that house. Like, from start to finish, we built it. And that's the beauty of being a small business owner, entrepreneur, business builder, whatever you want to call it. That's the spot. That's the sweet spot.
It's tangible, like we spoke about in the beginning, is like the tangible nature of running a business is like, you see that truck, you see that wheel loader, you see that material handler, you know, like, and then you see the checks rolling into your bank account. You're like, cool, man, it all makes sense. And so that's the thing, is like, so sharing, you know, like, and providing service, so it's all about, you know, for me is like providing more service is like, so, you know, the brokerage business is kind of gypsy, like, you know, it's like, when the market's up, you're getting like calls from India and China or wherever. And then when the market's down, like, those guys are gone. Right. And so I just kind of started thinking, I'm like, all right, well, how can I apply what I know to the brokerage business and provide more service? Is like, so I was talking to Hank the other day, right? And, you know, I was just explaining, like, you know, we're not price chuckers, you know, like, we don't just, here's my price on this. I said to him, I'm like, we're like relationship people, you know. It's like, so can we probably buy from way more yards than what we're buying from? For sure. But you know what? Like, we just deal with our friends, you know?
Yeah.
And like, we have that relationship. Dude, when you and I structure deals, the deal doesn't even really come into the conversation. Like, we're talking about what we're doing on the weekend, how our wives are doing. And we're talking personal stuff. And then it's like, oh yeah. Oh, right. I got a load of, you know, batteries or whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. You know, like, that's the thing. Like, so
people do business with people they want to do business with anymore. And I think that was one of the things. I was talking to a guy across the country the other day, and he goes, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years. And he goes, or 40 years. I don't know. He's like, he was 60 something years old. And he said, we were talking about aluminum. And he goes, you know, when I first started, you know, it was just such a top secret deal about who was shipping what, where it was going, how many pounds, this and that. And he goes, and then I started seeing you post where you were selling, what you were selling, who you were selling to. And I was like, yeah, the internet fucked up the scrap business. I mean, everybody knows the price. I mean, the difference between your price and the interstate battery guy price on batteries and the other guy's price is fucking pretty nominal. It's about the same. So the reality of it is you're going to start doing business with people you want to do business with. So you better figure out the relationship component of your business. Go out and find like-minded individuals that if something does go sideways on a container or a load or whatever, they're going to call you as a friend and they want what's best for your business. And they're going to say, this is screwed up. Let's fix it together. Let's figure out how to keep this train moving. Or you're just going to do business with a certain individual because you like doing business with them. And I think that goes like when the internet commoditizes all the information and says, here's the price. This is what it is. So now when I post shit on LinkedIn, I'm promoting people that do me a good job. and I'm promoting people's businesses that I think run a fucking quality shop. And that's one of the reasons why I do it. There's no secrets. Everybody knows the price. They know what's going on.
But again, like, progressive, dude, you're progressive. And so like the old school is all about holding your cards close to your chest, right? And like never revealing any information and never trying to help anybody. Hey, I've seen it my whole career, and I'm sure you've seen it too, is like nobody wants to help you. And it's just like, so for me, I'm like, I'm reversing that. For you, you're reversing that. Because like we're just like, this is not like a cooperative way of doing business. This is like an adversarial way of doing business, right? And so, so even, you know, how we structure deals is like, I just say, this is the price that I'm getting, you know, like that's our sell price. This is my freight. It's like, why can't everybody just do that? You know, like, I just find that like, that old school way of negotiation has to go. It has to go. You know?
So let's talk. Like that's like a perfect lead in my book, because I want to finish up with probably one of the most crucial things that you've been working on lately, and how all these experiences from family-owned business to the back end of a .com business to, you know, a small family-owned business where you got to run the whole deal, to big corporate world, to brokerage, kind of brought you, I think, full circle to Scrap University. And I think that's why I wanted to make sure we went through the history back to the street cred, because without the fucking street cred, without the history, then Scrap University is just another .com guy out there hoping to try and make some money on the scrap business, right? So that's why it's super crucial for me to walk the steps through it. And so I'm going to let you dive into Scrap University for a few minutes and just tell us what it's about. But I mean, I'm just going to give you the platform and say, let her rip.
And I like your format, you know, like we spoke about how your format would roll on your podcast. You said I kind of just freewheel it, but if you really look at your format, it's very linear. And so I appreciate the fact that like you have that ability to kind of tie everything in, and you can see how this came about is like, so now I'm like going back into the .com business, you know? And so, but it's not me, it's my partners, right? I have two very strong women partners that have made their way through this male dominated industry to be the top of what they do. So it's wonderful having them as my partners. And then also, like say, for instance, you and Nick and all of the other friends at different yards that are becoming our quote unquote experts, right? You know, it's like, so I'm trying to involve everyone that I personally know. Hey, obviously I'm not involving everyone in this thing because I just don't know you. But if anyone wants to be involved in our university and share what you know, it's a wonderful thing. Is like, so it's like, again, changing that fundamental from, I don't share my information, I hold it, and if I go to my grave with this information, that's fine. Whereas for me, I can't. So once this thing launches, I can die the next day knowing that I did a wonderful service by sharing all of this 43 years of information, right? It's valuable. Even if one person, you know, increases their knowledge and increases their income, increases their career trajectory, just one person, I've done my job. You know, do I know that it's going to impact our entire industry? For sure I do. For sure I do. Like, I know that like there's really no real training out there, and not only training, but now it's a certification. Like, you can put that on your resume. Like, you have no idea how many people I would interview at Sims, you know, like just for like, you know, a sweeper job or like a sorting job. And I would say, hey, do you have any experience with metals? And they're like, no, I don't even know what metal is, like I didn't even know metal was recyclable. Like it's kind of like, it blows your mind, but then you kind of go, okay, well, I guess I'm just from this business and I know it. But if someone came in and they said that they have like their certified scrap metal professional degree, CSMP, from Scrap University, I'm like, hired. Because I know that they've gone through a training program, they can hit the ground running. Whereas I find that it's crazy. And people wonder, oh, why do I have such big turnover? It's because you're putting people out in a yard and telling them to figure it out.
Yeah. Kind of like that family did to you. Said, figure it out. You've been here before. But at least you had the background to get you to that point where a lot of people, and we've had this conversation internally, was employee retention. Well, if you just throw them to the wolves, people are running around like, what am I doing? I don't know. They're afraid to make a mistake, but then they're, forklifts are going and people are doing, and they're like, what is my role here? And without a little bit of background to understand like the process and how everything works, I think that's the kicker. And so I think what you're describing with Scrap University is the ability for an individual who might be interested in the scrap industry to go and kind of take that first step, almost like a trade school welder or plumber or whatever, and say, I'm willing to spend a little bit of money and scratch the surface and see if this isn't something that I could get a little bit more into, and if this isn't a career path for me, right?
Well, it kind of like serves multiple purposes. Like, so you touched on like the outside looking in, and like, so that's certainly one of like our biggest drivers, I guess, is like, we want to educate the general public on, hey, this is all metal is recyclable. 1, 2 is you can make plenty of money recycling metal, right? Is like, so especially in a time like this where people have lost jobs, income, and like, so now people are kind of like, how do I make money? I'm telling you, man, like if we just let people know how to recycle metal, they can start, going up and down, picking up, down in the backyard or like alley barbecues or whatever. You load it in your truck and you go cash it in. It's like,
How much of Scrap University is geared towards employers? Like, say the big corporate Goliaths of the world, or the medium-sized scrap recycling companies, geared towards beginning stages of like pre-employment or the first week of employment. Hey, go understand this, and this is part of our training program to get you more involved in our company.
Right. And so so this is our way of giving back to the industry, is like, so the first iteration that we're making right now is actually for the industry. Okay. And so it's like for anywhere from a small 2-3 people working at a small little scrapyard all the way up to Schnitz and Sims, right? Is like, so, because, hey, I've had experience with both organizations and I know that they don't have a training platform like this. And so essentially why we came up with this program is because, people are set up for failure right now. Okay. And that's the turnover. So people get frustrated that they go and ask like the senior guy, and the senior guy won't tell them anything, or he'll give them little bits of information. Okay. And so we're just like, again, it's just like the brokerage business that I do. Same application here is like, we're going to give clear, truthful, transparent information that you're going to get the real deal. And then you're going to go, oh, okay, I know how to upgrade number 2 to number 1. Like it's like, that's not being taught. That's not available. And so like, when you go through our program, you learn all of the fundamentals, it's like, so commodity, look,
Your tagline, I figured out your tagline. Back to the fundamentals.
It is.
The fundamentals of scrap, right?
So,
that's what it is.
So let me ask you this, Brett. Okay, let me ask you this question. So if you work in the scrap business, do you think you should know how to identify metal?
100%. I mean, it depends on your job, but I think that
No?
from when we're talking about a huge corporation, I think it would be, and I take my whole statement back. Maybe yes, you should, because then you understand the business and you understand the industry you're in. Maybe that's where you're going with it.
And that's what I'm trying to illustrate here is that, like, you go to a cocktail party and you say, oh, what do you do, sir? And it's like, oh, I'm in the scrap metal business. Or if you want to use a euphemism, I'm in metal recycling business, right? And I like using both of those different terms at parties that I go to. And like, one is like, oh, like that's dirty. And one is like, oh my gosh, you're saving the planet. It's like, okay. But yeah. So when someone asks you a question though, about it, like instead of just saying like, oh cool, you're in the scrap business and like pass the chips, you know, they're like, well, what type of metal do you recycle? And you're like, oh, like aluminum and copper and I don't know. You see what I'm saying? It like doesn't make you sound like you know your stuff. And so if you're in accounting or marketing or the CEO, I don't care who you are in this business, you gotta know metals, okay? And like people get like intimidated with non-ferrous because like, you know, there's 3,000 grades or whatever. And I get it. Like when I train people, they get kind of glossed over and they're like, whoa, man, like sealed units and motors and alternators and starters and it's like harness wire. I'm like, okay, just take it in a little bit at a time. And so that's kind of like what our program does. So it shows a generalist, aka me, in the yard handling the metal. It goes to an expert, say like Nick, and then you're hit with a quiz. Okay, so you're seeing the metal, you're getting an understanding of what the metal is, and then you do a quiz. Okay, so you know, okay, what makes number one copper? All right, there's no attachments, there's no paint, you know, all of these things that you already know. But not everybody does. And so like, hey, you ask the question, is this for people that are in the business already? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like when you're hiring somebody, like they need to take this program. If there's someone that just is like your buyer that only buys, I love it how, you know, we separate buyers into like, I'm a ferrous buyer and I'm a non-ferrous buyer. And it's just like, well, why?
Yeah, why don't we just buy? Like, let's go get the shit in the door, you know?
Why don't we just call you a buyer? And so again, it just comes back to my training with buyers in the Sims organization is like, I'm holding like a brass training session.
Yeah.
And one of the first questions I got is like, so Brad, is brass like non-magnetic? This is a seasoned buyer that's probably said the word honey or ebony or yellow brass or whatever and quoted a number. But if they saw the material, they wouldn't know what the heck it is.
Yeah.
And so
that's what the university aims to do, is to dial all that in, and from the start to the finish, and can train anybody, right? And so I don't want to cut you off, but I know that you and I could sit here and bullshit about scrap and the whole thing for probably hours.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I want people to know, like, if they want to look at Scrap University, they want to check it out, where do they go?
Okay. Scrapuniversity.com. It's like pretty straightforward.
If you want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
You don't want to get a hold of me. What do I know? I don't know anything, you know, like, so
you're the head of Scrap University. I hope to God you know something about scrap.
I'm just the dude, man. I'm just the dude.
Detroit Scrap. If somebody wants to look at selling some scrap to Detroit Scrap, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh man, Detroit
Call
Scrap.
Faisal.
Call Faisal. You know, he's the wheeler dealer. I'm just
okay.
Hey, you know, like, I appreciate it. Being on this program, I think again, what you're doing is progressive, and it's just cool that we have this friendship and you're able to kind of dive deep into, people's history, like, and so for me to be a part of your show, I'm honored for sure. And
shit, you're progressive. You start a whole goddamn college about scrap. I'm just talking about it to smart people,
Again,
you win the contest.
Again, Brett, it's just like, that's my nature. I'm just like, I would rather my partners get the accolades, and I would rather, like Nick get the accolades for his contributions. Like, it was just an idea, it was just an idea. Like, why, who am I? What makes me special? Like, so I just keep kind of downplaying who I am, and it's more about the content. Okay.
Yeah. Well, then we'll leave it at that, though. The content is what is the driver, right? And that's what we're doing here. We're talking to people about scrap, guys that live it, breathe it, gals that are involved in it every day. And the female side sometimes gets discounted in our business, but like you said, you brought it up, two smart ladies that have kind of run the gauntlet in our industry. I've got some ladies that have run the gauntlet in our industry on my end, and they're just as appreciated as anybody else in our organization. And I know that to be true with you. So if anybody wants to go check out Scrap University, it's cool. We've kind of been involved in it a little bit on our end. And I'm looking forward to having another podcast in person with you where we sit down, drink a few PBRs in a can, and we can shake hands and hug and do what we do. And they're not going to be afraid of getting corona.
And there's a lot of truth to that. So, but this was cool that we could do this, get our views on this wonderful business out to the public. And I just want to thank you. And dude, I'm looking forward to an in-person meeting in Idaho. That'll be so
Appreciate you, Brad. Thanks for taking the time, man. International Scrap Live now.
Thank you, dude.
All right.